So first, hi, I'm Deborah McConkey, Chair of Programming for HPSWA. I am so happy to be here for two reasons. One, I was caught in the power outage in Madrid, and it only took me 18 hours to get here when I was an hour away. So I am very happy to be functioning and here with Wi-Fi. And the other main reason is because these two people that are going to be presenting today are fabulous. And this topic, I think, is such an important one, whether we have parents or whether it is for ourselves looking ahead. And it's called the retirement of traditional senior housing. We're going to talk about new approaches to aging at home or in a community. We have two experts here with a lot of experience in this. First, Meredith Oppenheim, who many of you know, who has been in this business for 25 years with leading U.S. senior housing owners and operators that have billion-dollar portfolios. And she really knows what is going on, both what she's done in the past and what she's doing currently, looking into the opportunities and options for putting innovation into housing. And Saeko brings this from a global perspective because she's originally from Japan and had to develop ways for caring for her mother in a long distance fashion. So she's very familiar with home-based care and is working very much on some projects now to bring technology to help seniors to live at home in place. So they both have slide decks, lots of information. We're going to hold the Q&As to the end, but if you have questions along the way, just start putting them in the chat and we'll make sure that we have a few minutes at the end to handle them. So thank you both for all the work you put into this. And Meredith.
Thank you so much, Deb. It's great to hear your story and glad you got where you needed to be. So let's talk about how to succeed in letting the baby boomers bust senior housing. So this is a topic that often comes with not a fun perspective, could be dismal and difficult, but I like to flip the script a little bit and let's look at this challenge and opportunity in a new and interesting way. So as Deb said, I've been doing this work for many decades. This is my 35th year. I started when my grandmother here and my other grandparents' vitality and longevity became my priority. And I'm thrilled to say that I've had an opportunity to work with some of the largest owners and operators in senior housing and earn the respect of my peers, as well as sit on Mayor Bloomberg's Age Friendly Commission and the Department for Aging of New York City, and earned a congressional award for this work. So let's talk about the future of senior housing. First, we need to establish what is senior housing. Senior housing is this Venn diagram and is at the intersection of healthcare, real estate, and hospitality. And for me, as a recent HBS grad, I thought this was sufficiently complex to figure out what I could possibly do with my career. And I was motivated by one of my professors who was one of the founders of Staples. And she suggested if you're not going to go into consulting or banking, do something you're passionate about. So I'm very passionate about working with older people. So it's been a very exciting trajectory of my career. But at this juncture, we need to look at every dimension, and we'll touch on all of them critically, creatively. We need to be proactive and productive in our pursuit of innovation. So first, let me define what our options are today. First and foremost, there are multiple types of services that are available in senior housing, and I like to break it up in these three buckets. I do work with a lot of families, and I find that it can be overwhelming and confusing. So to think about it very specifically and hopefully simplistically is hospitality is a piece of it, with dining, housekeeping, laundry activities. Transportation is often part of it. And then there's the healthcare piece of it, where as an industry, we support ADLs, activities of daily life. So bathing, dressing, feeding, toileting, and then there's specialized care for dementia, incontinence, and medication management. And as you can see on the left-hand side, there are different types of senior housing. So you'll hear me and others say IL, AL, and now you know what that means. I even included the average age of entry. And what's interesting is I joined the industry right after HBS in '02. The average age of entry into independent living was roughly mid-70s. And what we're seeing as an industry is the average age is increasing. And many know people are living longer, healthier lives, and their ability to remain independent as long as possible is therefore protracted. So that has significant consequences on our industry. The other piece of this is life plan communities, which offers the continuum. Again, a little bit of an earlier age at entry, and we'll talk about that later. You may also hear the term active adult, and that's predominantly dominated by home builders. I worked for one of them called K. Havnani. It's a publicly traded company, and I brought them into the business of independent living. But by and large, this part of the industry is increasingly very attractive to those that have been in this part of the continuum, predominantly because everybody is on the quest to secure residents that could come in younger and more vibrant and healthier so we can serve them longer. So let's go from the top. The number of older people is more than doubling, and candidly, it's troubling. So while I always say aging is not a disease, the number of aging people could kill senior housing and make us obsolete unless we adapt. And that is what this presentation is all about today. So the countdown's begun. You may have heard this. I've written about it extensively, posted about it quite a bit. Medicare is expected to run out of money by 2036 if nothing changes. And candidly, we all know that that won't be the case. So we're running out of time, and you'll see we're running out of resources. So I've tailored this to show 10 precautionary problems that the industry has to address. So here's the countdown. Number 10, just go with the status quo. Well, heretofore is just not going to work anymore. We had a pandemic. We have demographics with the oldest baby boomers turning 80 this year. And then some of our key metrics. We saw during COVID, our occupancy plummeted. And while I was starting my own business, I was subsidizing all of that with doing consulting work. And I worked with one of the largest private equity firms. They had 3 portfolios that they had just closed on right before the pandemic. And the only way to recover our occupancy, and the industry did this pretty extensively, and it's a last resort, is to discount very heavily. So it has taken us a number of years to recover from the dip in occupancy that we saw. And we're now just about getting to pre-COVID levels of occupancy. The other challenge that we have, because this was not an easy feat and continues to be a challenge, and I'll talk about a little bit more while the costs have increased in labor, we have an aging housing supply in the industry. So as of 2019, our average building was 21 years old. So what we're seeing now is close to 50% of our inventory is in predominantly markets, and the buildings are 25 years or older. So that is, as you can imagine, a population of the boomers type that want to disrupt the status quo. Here we are, 50% of our inventory is over 25 years old. And that is obviously challenging and something our industry is dealing with. So we've got to think out of the box. And the way that I do that with my clients, I'm working with one of the largest nonprofits right now, is to think, who is this future customer? What do they need and want? And if you take a look at the playbook of other industries, here is a complete out-of-the-box picture. So Chick-fil-A, one of the consultants that work with my nonprofit that I'm working for, shared this, and I loved it. So I took it. And what's interesting is you can't even eat in this box, but you can drive through 4 different bays and have delivery brought to your car. So this has completely changed the paradigm of how one interacts with Chick-fil-A, because if you're a delivery service, you can quickly go in and out. If you're any age person, you can quickly go through. And this has been transformative for the company and is a pilot. So when I think out of the box, we need to be inspired by stories and innovators like this. So let's just talk about some of the supply and demand trends so everybody is clear clear on what's happening. So as the 80 and older population is expected to grow in a very significant way over the next decades, what we're also seeing is our supply is rather flat. And that's because we were at higher point pre-COVID, where our inventory growth was at 4% annually. And we continue to be below 2% for IL and AL sectors combined. So our inventory growth is slowing. And those of us with MBAs and HBS MBAs, we know that this is not necessarily intuitive, right? You would think that as demand is growing, supply should grow, but there's a good reason for this, because unfortunately, materials, financing, and labor costs are increasing. And right now, putting back on my real estate investment banker hat, you can essentially buy properties below replacement costs. So there isn't really a very large incentive and many entities that are building in this environment despite the good conditions. So number 9 is we potentially could overlook the care crisis, and that would be quite dangerous. And here's why. There are just too few caregivers, doctors, and nurses. So we look at the caregiver support ratio, which is essentially the ratio of people 45 to 64, those who can care for elders, and many of us are in that category, to the population of people over 80. And so while the population of older people is increasing, the coverage of those people is decreasing, and quite remarkably. And this is challenging in many ways, but one way is it becomes so difficult for our industry to staff, and it becomes increasingly difficult for families, particularly adult women, to care for their elders. You know that is happening in Asian countries, but it's also going to happen here. The other piece that's really challenging is that geriatrics relative to other specialties is not actually that popular or that lucrative on a comparative basis. So what you're seeing is we have less than 7,500 geriatric physicians to a massive population of older people. So the ratio there is roughly 1 geriatrician to 8,000 older adults. And I hear it and see it all the time, and I get the phone calls. Where can my mom go? I can't get her an appointment. And this is very challenging and will become increasingly so. And lastly, people say, well, let's lean into the nursing pool, and maybe the nurses can support us. And we have a lot of nurses in our communities in the industry. But the challenge is there's already a 1 million nurse gap between the projected demand for nurses and the projected nurse workforce. So this is something that is going to cripple the industry, and we have to take a different approach. So my approach is don't pay attention to prevention. The industry will make a substantial mistake if we ignore this potential trend. So prevention requires attention. There's greater than 75% of US healthcare costs tied to chronic diseases, and they're largely preventable with lifestyle change. And what gets me excited for the work that we do in the industry is we as an industry can initiate and facilitate that. So when you think about that 80% of people 65 and older have one chronic disease and almost 70% have two, pretty much everybody we serve by the time we see them is dealing with some sort of chronic condition. And we're in a great position to do what Blue Cross did, right? They have calculated that for every dollar they spent on interventions like physical activity, nutrition, and smoking, they can save between $3 and $10 in reduced healthcare costs. And this translates into annual savings in the tens of billions of dollars nationwide. So because we are in the business of 3 meals a day, all the activities, the healthcare under our roofs, we are in a very, very promising position to make real change happen on the preventative side. So what I did was, and many of you know, I launched Vitality Society after a few decades in the industry, and I wrote a manifesto with the American Senior Housing Association in 2018, and I basically said, the new population is coming. We have a few years, but we have to do everything differently and better. And the industry, candidly, is very, very slow to adopt any types of changes and do anything quite drastic. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But at the end of the day, it is a real estate business, and it is the operations that we use to calculate the value of the buildings, et cetera. But when the market is good for real estate transactions, this continues to be a very lucrative asset class on a relative basis to other industries like hotel and residential. So we do well as an industry, but I basically said we're not going to continue to do well unless we change. So rather than just talking the talk, I went in and I walked the walk, and I launched Vitality Society after years of focus groups to figure out, what does this generation need and want? Why as an industry does only 10% of older people move in? And what I came to realize through these focus groups is just people being together was great. And every response that they had hinged on health. Provided I'm healthy, now that he's healthy, because we're healthy, we're going to travel, we're going to work, we're going to volunteer. But if you don't have your health, you can't do anything. So we launched Vitality Society. It was less than $1 a day. I bootstrapped it, self-funded it, all on my own, just to get smarter and better for this next stage and wave of the industry. And our results were staggering. People lost weight, their hearts were improving. They said emotionally and physically, their doctors said they were happier, their metrics were better. People were managing cancers and other diseases and had this support group, their balance, their brain health in terms of lifelong learning, because we had every Sunday was a different theme each month. So we covered art and music and medicine and food as medicine, all these different topics. And by virtue of them staying together has been transformative to their lives, and many relationships and friendships have blossomed and continue to do so. And as a result, because of the impact we had, we were recognized by a number of media outlets without any PR budget. So number 7, undervalue value-based care. So making and keeping people well has to be part of what we do and how we make money. So Humana figured out that by investing in value-based arrangements, they saw a 23% reduction in medical care cost compared to traditional Medicare, and a remarkable reduction in terms of infections and medication adherence increased. And why this is relevant is because this is here to stay. Value-based care will become a $174 billion business by 2032. We could and should be part of this, right? By coming to senior housing, by engaging with other people, by eating healthier meals, moving more, we can reduce the cost of care and be responsible to take on that risk, provided we have the right partners. And that's some of the work that I'm doing right now on the future of the industry. We can't do this alone, but we could align with those that do it well. And I'll just say that I applied to a value-based care week-long program at HVS, which starts on May 12th. And I'm so excited because I have a week. Turns out that you need more education to change this industry. Number 6, over-rely on AI would be a big problem, but let's let the bots raise the bar, because we can use it for efficiency, accuracy, empathy. I'm doing a project right now with my client to look at the whole funnel of how we market and sell and move people through into a move-in, and seeing how we could improve our results and make ourselves more efficient with a lean team and a nonprofit. How do we do that better, and how do we get better results in the process? So as people might have seen, the data that we learned at the Harvard Business School Women's Conference, that the chatbot's responses to patient questions were often rated higher in both quality and empathy compared to those of physicians. And there are a lot of explanations that people have for that. But at the end of the day, we can lean into this because it is an effective tool. Now, it has to be in a controlled environment. But one example from the Cornell Tech AI conference that I just attended is ambient scribe, right? So the doctor's in the room, he's punching away at the keyboard. Rather than doing that, the ambient scribe will collect the narrative, put it in the electronic medical record, and therefore that reduces the amount of time that he's keying in information and administrative time after dedicated to doing that. Now, the good news is 90% of US adults age 65 and older are using the internet, according to the data. Yet beware of A1 steak sauce, because my mom, who's here right now, recently said to me, when Brielle, who's my daughter, 14, comes over for Passover, make sure she brings her computer and teaches me A1. And let's be clear, this is not steak sauce, but this is transformative. And if you're not happy with AI in that form, how about let's enter the home humanoid robot? So we know that, as you saw, there'll be a scarcity of doctors, and we can lean into AI for that and program them to be smarter better over time. And now we can lead into robots. I'm not sure if this is freaky or fabulous. I was thinking about and talking about this at an industry event, but at the end of the day, just like you can train an AI, you can train these robots to do tasks like a butler, or even better, to help you do what senior housing is going to struggle with, which is to support the activities of daily life with less staff, because of immigration and because, as you saw, the caregiver ratio to those that need it. So this seems far-fetched and far gone, but it's not. And potentially this is something to consider. Saeko, my colleague, will share this, but I was in Japan and Korea recently, and we were sitting at our table at the hotel, and all of a sudden a cart with food was moving into the kitchen in a very linear route, and then coming out the other door empty. And it was quite remarkable, and you just have to make sure you don't get in its way. 5, assume that one size fits all solutions work. They don't. There's gender differences, there are generational differences, there's generals and other affinity groups. So I always say this, that woman are to vitality and men are to performance. And why I say that is because when I launched Vitality Society, I did not intend it to be a women's platform. That being said, one of my mentors said men will need it the most, but women will show up the most. And she nailed it. It's exactly what happened. And women just like to bond, like to connect. Many of us here like to do that regularly, and it's part of who we are and what we like to do. So as you can appreciate, like, the future of senior housing could be Golden Girls co-housing. And remarkably, those women were 50 years old and I'm 51. So it's not necessarily how I'm living today, but it could potentially be, for many of us in my generation, a very good option. But first and foremost, 33% of the boomer women are unmarried, and 20% of the boomer women never had kids. So there's this emerging trend of solo agers, and this idea of living with your friends is a real good option. And lastly, if someone could just take
Could you
care of
mute yourself? Yes.
Okay. And then longevity themed, male life expectancy is anticipated to increase, which is really remarkable. I loved this picture. I thought it was really funny, but it's really true. You know, there's this bro culture. How long could you live? How far could you go? My husband's in a biking group. They really go very far distances. And it's great that they bond over activities that interest them. And there's very much a competitive piece to it, whether they're with themselves or each other. And so intergenerational is another option. Some people will say, I would love to live in a community with people of all ages. And then some people will say, I'd like to live with my family in the generations of all ages. So both models are true. It might be your family or another family, but multiple generations. And then last are these more affinity communities, and you're seeing them blossom. The gay and lesbian, the Actors Fund in California. Here's I'm standing with one of our Vitality Society members at a community called the Fairfax. It was a Marriott senior community for retired military in Virginia at the base of Fairfax. We sold that as part of the portfolio. We sold to Sunrise, but now it's a Sunrise. And it was fun to go back 20 years later to introduce Vitality Society. They rolled it out there and see all the flags and the patriotism there. Number 4, believe the most visible locations are the most viable. That will be a major mistake, because it used to be, when the industry came early on, it was in like the late 80s and 90s, it would be store my stuff, store my mom at the Brighton Gardens, which was a Marriott, now a Sunrise, as I passed to the store, which down here is now Whole Foods. This is in my county, very close to where I live and I grew up. And what was interesting is this used to be what the most desirable locations would be, where the most traffic was. But what we're learning is destinations are becoming more desirable. So there was a great Wall Street Journal piece, wealthier Americans are paying millions to age in luxury campuses. And the one that I'll point out, the article pointed out, is the Vi of Palo Alto at Stanford. And it's on the periphery of the campus. It's across from one of the major retail strips there. And when it opened, it was millions of dollars to get in. And I just want to mention, this is what they call an entry fee structure in what was called a continuing care retirement community. So you have independent living, assisted living, dementia. So you move in there, it's like a contract, an insurance contract. As your needs escalate, you move through the continuum, but you don't have to move out or move along. You could do it in your unit, or you can move through the units of the campus. And this is very popular, and it's not inexpensive for most people. It's predominantly dominated by nonprofits, but Vi used to be Hyatt, and now it's still Hyatt, but they go by a different name. And this community is wonderful. I'll just make a very short statement that one of my mentors from HBS, who I was introduced to by a professor, he was a multi-billionaire. He was a former CEO of a Silicon Valley company. And then he went on to be a very successful venture capitalist, and then agreed to be my mentor. And what was interesting, I remember working at Marriott Senior Living, and he called me, and his voice was very distinctive. And he's like, I need you to call me back. And when I spoke to him, he basically said, you need to explain this to me, because I'm supposed to pay millions of dollars, still a few $1,000s a month. And then when I die, my estate will only get 85% back. And I said, that's right. And he said, those aren't the deals that made me a billionaire. I'm never moving. But nonetheless, many people do. And it's a very successful community, and it's a very successful model. But at the end of the day, these university campuses where you could engage in lifelong learning, be part of an intergenerational community, have the amenities of a campus, really good healthcare often, like the University of Michigan is a good example. These are very attractive. Now, if you're not interested in going to campuses, you might want to go overseas. And there's some great options. It's become so popular that US News and World Report ranks them. And what's interesting is that when you move there, if it's full time, you don't have the benefits of Healthcare of America. Obviously, some of the benefits you've accumulated don't transfer, probably most of them, as I've learned, but at the end of the day, they're very attractive. Number 3, neglect community as an opportunity. That would be another big mistake. So connection is great medicine. We need to lead with an aspirational lifestyle. We need to give people a reason to move in. Fun could be number 1. I learned with the Vitality Society that the more I made people laugh, the more interesting and exciting the experiences were, the more often they'd come back. And it was interesting, during the pilot, they paid, as I said, less than $1 a day. We had over 100 people consistently by design. And what was interesting is our average subscriber was coming 2 hours a week, but our super subscribers were coming 2 hours a day. And we were helping them engage more broadly in their life outside this community, because we're giving them the strength, the stamina, and the stability to do everything. And social determinant health, as we know, loneliness is deadly. And we need to prevent that. And I believe there's a huge opportunity for senior housing to become a hub of vitality and activity, whether or not people reside with us, or we service them on the outside and they visit us. And that's some of the work that the nonprofit I work with now has done successfully. They get a membership and they come for meals and activities and could be part of the community. And maybe they're not ready to move in. Maybe they never move in. Now, it's interesting. Transportation used to be the challenge. When I sat on Mayor Bloomberg's Age-Friendly Commission and the New York City Department for Aging, it became cost prohibitive to move seniors around the city. And I remember my grandma taking one of the municipal buses, and she'd wait 3 hours to go like 30 minutes on each side of the trip. So it didn't work out. But now with Uber Caregiver, which is reimbursed through Medicare, the seniors can get to the doctors, and we have those doctors' offices. So I think as an industry, it's very interesting. Number 2, underestimate the impact of evolving Medicare and Medicaid changes. Again, it's going to be difficult, and we've got to navigate it and work through it, because at the end of the day, by 2036, there is no more money. So they look scared. I'm scared. If they're not happy, we're not going to be happy. So it's going to affect this generation of older people and trickle down to our generation of older people. It's problematic. Keep yourself well. Do everything you can to stay well. And the last one, ignore disparity, which is insanity. So affordability is a huge opportunity. And at the moment, the data suggests that only 13% of single households 75 and older in the US could afford assisted living. So think about that. 13% of the people could afford assisted living, and only 14% could afford in-home care. And again, these are single people households, but that's a huge part of this population. And it makes sense when you think about it, because the median cost for assisted living stands at $5,300 a month. And that is expensive, but what's more concerning, frankly, and what would continue to be a problem is reflecting that there's been a significant 50% increase over the past decade. So if those costs continue to rise because our labor costs, our food costs, all of our costs, maintaining the communities, getting materials to sustain the communities, all of that's more expensive. It becomes more expensive to those that are living there. And in New York City, some of you have asked me about this. I've helped many families. I'm happy to help yours. So let me know. I know the communities and I know the owners. And if you're not happy, also call me because I'd like to report that. So the cost could be $20,000 or more monthly. So when I did this work, I oversaw a multi-billion-dollar platform for the REIT Ventas. And in 2014, the highest price was about $12,000 in New York City, and that has grown to $20,000 or more. Now layer in if you need Alzheimer's care or you need specialized other services with medications and incontinence, that could get even more expensive. So the last thing I'll say is there is an emerging trend in, and this is the greatest opportunity of our time, is not only just affordable senior housing that's funded with subsidies from states and cities. I was going to say Miami does a great job, New York does a good job. This is a nonprofit building. This is the Spitzer family, not related to Elliot Spitzer, but needless to say, they philanthropic donors to this community. They're lovely people. The nonprofit built it, manages it, and their philanthropic funds close the gap between what people can pay, and it's often 30% total income, which is all fixed income. So they're paying a few $100s a month, those that qualify and reside here, and it's open to everybody. And I'll just say, here's the last slide. And if you want to take a picture of this, which summarizes what we've discussed, the countdown is here, and please stay in touch. And thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Meredith. And Saeko will now talk to us about aging in place.
Okay. Thank you, Meredith. That was a good presentation. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. My name is Saeko Tsuchihashi, and I'm taking over the aging in place portion of the presentation. Before going into the presentation, why I am interested in going into this field, I would like to explain. Coming from Japan, 30% population is over 65, and then my mother getting older, and she was hospitalized, and she's going to the rehabilitation, moving back to the home, going back to the hospital. Now in senior facility, I have to learn a lot about how Japanese coordinated care system works. And when I looked at the US system, I was about 6-7 years ago, I was very surprised because US system is extremely fragmented, and then care system is, some of the care system is completely neglected. So, so I decided to solve some of the problem in the United States. That's why I went in this field. First, I'm going to give you the it doesn't move. Oh, sorry, this is not. A presentation. What is the outline? And first, I'm going to explain, because you may be interested in what Japanese care system is. I'm going to talk about Japanese care system and comparison between Japan and US, and then going into the US aging place in trend and challenge, and then provide some solutions. And then here's a picture of Japanese care system. Japanese elderly care system has a 3 component. One is universal healthcare, and then universal long-term care insurance. And after 40, everybody has to put the premium. And then when you get to the 65, this LTC is going to provide a lot of support. And second one is certified care manager assigned to each older adult. And then this person is very different from a US care manager. So I'm going to explain later about the example. But basically, this person is follow the older adults from the beginning to the end, and they coordinate hospital, rehabilitation, home, and connected all the relevant parties like vendors. And when you need a bed, they're going to take care of you. When you needed to find a visiting dentist, they're going to take care of you. And then coordinate and transportation, daycare. Basically, this person is going to do everything. Very continuity service can be expected. And then the third one is a comprehensive community support center, which is run by local municipalities. And they're going to provide meal services, regular checkup, and all kinds of stuff. And then in order for you to understand a little bit about how the difference between Japanese care manager and the US care manager, I guess just give you an example. Mrs. Tanaka is 85 years old, and Mrs. Tanaka applied for LTCI in a local government, and then they said that, oh, you need a help, and then she can choose a care manager. So this care manager is going to create a care plan, and this care plan can be domestic help visits 3 times a week and the bathing service at home a couple times a week, that kind of things. And 6 months later, Ms. Tanaka falls and her need changes. And then she has to go to this short-term stay at the care facility, and then she needs a visiting nurse services. The same care manager is take care of everything and changing the care plan. And then later in her life, she has to go to the full service facility. And then the same care manager is going to help her move. So basically, this care manager is very, very central role, playing a central role and do everything to continue services. Then what about the US? Mr. Smith is 82 years old. He's in the hospital, and the hospital care manager is going to plan his discharge and then bring him to the skilled nursing facility. And then skilled nursing facility is take over, and this facility case manager is going to provide a therapy and length stay, and he moves back to home. And home, a different person, a home health nurse take over, and then based on the Medicare. And then there is not continuum care for non-medical care services at home unless you pay money to find a private care manager. There's nothing continuity is available. It's very fragmented. And then I just give you a little bit of the price. It's a cost. And because Japanese long-term care insurance would subsidize assisted living, nursing home, and home care, the cost out of the pocket cost is a fraction of a US services. And that is significantly different. And then the reason that Japan started to implement those care system is necessity. 1980, 1990, government and also the society knew that it's going to be a problem. The population is shrinking. And then right now, 2024, 65 plus old adults, one adult is taken care by 1.8 working adults. And it's very small number of working adults is taking care of old adult. And by 2050, it is going to be 1 versus 1.3, which is not going to be sustainable. And so the Japanese government, society, academic, all are heavily investing robots, AI, and technology and caregiving system. US is lucky compared to Japan. 2024, 65 plus older adults, 1 versus 3.5 working adults are helping. And even 2050, 2.5 working adults are helping 165 adults. Because of that, a lot of the current systems rely on human capital, but it's not going to be sustainable either. And then I talked about Japan, but actually it's the same as Western Europe, and then Asia is the same situation. small number of young people has to take care of a large number of the adults. Now going to the aging place trend in the US, and currently 2024, a 60 years old plus adult is 79 million, and it will be increased to 94 million. And actually, Meredith was talking about senior housing. Most of the people, 95% of all the adults actually live at home. Then 90% of people want to stay at home. The reason is that it is comfortable to stay at home and a nice environment, and also senior housing is expensive and it's hard to find. This is this slide is the number is prepared by WHO and then OECD, and U.S. life and health span is extremely lagged behind OECD countries. And currently, the health span is basically people are independent and then healthy. You don't need any help. And once it's past it, you need a lot of help. And then it unfortunately, this is coming. And then US lifespan right now is 76 years old. And then other countries are 80s. And health lifespan, which is kind of scary, is in the United States 66. And then other OECD countries, 75, 74, that range. And during that gap in the red zone, people need a lot of help, having health issues, injured, falls, and some memory loss. So you need a help. And then the things that you have to do is shrinking this red zone and then moving up the health span. That's what you have to do. And then what right now, who are taking care of this red zone? In the United States right now, 470,000 home care agencies. They are have 4 million professionals, and this 4 million professional is taking care of 12 million older adults. Not many. How about the rest of the population? Rest of the population is taken care by 14 million, which is the estimation, 14 million unpaid family caregivers. And then if these people are going to be paid, it probably costs $875.5 billion. That is a Columbia University study is indicating. And is it sustainable? And more people are getting older and then have to be supported by smaller percentage of younger people. It's not going to be sustainable. What about long-term care insurance? The US is very unique about long-term care insurance. Most of the developed countries has a universal long-term care insurance, like South Korea, Germany, Switzerland, France, Scandinavian countries all have the universal care system, care insurance. And then because it's only private pay available, it's a policy is not stable. It's very different from the company to company. And then also coverage is usually up to 5 years. If somebody became Alzheimer's disease and then has to suffer for 12 years, they don't cover. 7 years, you have to cover you have to cover yourself. And the premium is high. Because of that, only 3 to 4% of 50 plus adults have long-term care insurance, although 70% of 65 plus adults need it. And then in order to solve the problem, some of the states are trying to pass the legislation for long-term care insurance, but it's been struggling. And the Medicare Advantage pays some of the elder care support, but not much. So how can we address these challenges? So you have to create ecosystem utilizing innovation solution that allows every old adult to age in place and live healthy and active, independent life for as long as possible. And then the important thing is that every adult must take proactive measure, because once you hit this health span cliff, it is too late. So you have to be prepared and you have to be ready for those things.
Oh, fuck.
So here is the future innovation. This is a holistic view. If everything's happy, and then it can be done. As US doesn't have a reliable long-term care insurance, and the care system is very fragmented, and the family caregivers has to unpaid and overburdened. Maybe innovation is going to help them. And then if the fragmented care system, and then if no continuous care manager, then maybe AI care manager can help. AI care manager can supervise multiple agents. They have different tasks, and then that can be done. And if family care givers is unpaid and then overwhelmed, robots and AI can support household. And Meredith shows that, and then it is going to be it's not going to happen right away, but it's probably happen in the future. And then a lot of people are talking about a sensor to monitor yourself, and then somebody's gonna fall, but that's not enough. And you have to have a house. You have to have a safety optimized house so that even if you fall, you not get injured. And then that kind of things, it's possible to be done in the future. And but going back to the present, how to maintain independence at home. And there are 4 things that we can think of. And you can have a better house environment, and then the age-friendly smart home, that would be really helpful for independence. And then we are talking about a lot of technology, and I love technology, but it's very important to have a human touch. And then it's be part of the community, and then helping each other is very important. And then also going back to the technology, there are a lot of technologies available for to help people independent living. And of course, healthy lifestyle is important. First one is age-friendly smart home. And easiest one is retrofit home and grab bars, motion sensors, put the motion sensor in the accessible fixtures, and then you can make quick fix of your home. And so that when you get older, you don't have to worry about it. And the second is just smart home. And smart home is a connected home. And a lot of IT company, technology company, Amazon, Google, Apple, Samsung, Philip, all of them are creating the device to make the house home smart and connected. And if you really wanted to have a house from the scratch, the company breeders like Lennar, KB Homes are specialized in building smart homes. And the third one that is kind of interesting is that smart ADU. ADU is accessory dwelling unit. Probably you may know. This is a small house that you can put the house in the backyard. And then if you're getting older, you don't need five bedrooms, and children are gone. So they are going to live in a small house, and then let children live the bigger house or renting it out. And that's a ADU. And then a lot of ADUs are going on. And also recently they are started to have a tiny home, which is a prefabricated home. I'm sorry, just going. Prefabricated home, and the example is granny pod or boxables, and then they can put it in a back of a truck and put it on in the backyard and make a home. And then good thing about this little thing is you can put all the digital equipment, the smart home capability onto the small home, and then it's already have a safe environment for older people to live. So here's a technology example. There are tons of technology available, and not necessarily people are using, but there are some technologies for social engagement, some are home health monitoring, and some of them are safety security. And I'll just give you some of the example, and probably some of them have seen this LEQ. LEQ is a robot, the little robot, and connected with iPad or iPhone. And then this iPhone is controlling this robot. And then LQ is at good mornings. He wakes up and saying, "How are you? How are you doing?" And then, "Did you sleep well?" And it's just basically companion plus. And then also he asks, "Would you like to play music?" Or "Would you like to, did you take a medication?" So they basically, as a companion, following the order routes, be a friend, and then also take care of the day-to-day things. And then another example that I give you a neighbor force is an interesting company that there are a lot of neighbors. It's a community. There are people who are interested in helping older adults. And then this technology connect people who are the neighbors. And then these neighbors are going to help particular individual for grocery or give them a ride or cleaning, that kind of thing they do using a technology. And then health monitoring, the one of the things that I'm interested in, Toy Lab. Toy Lab is hello. Toy Lab is Toy Lab is a AI equipped toilet seat. So this toilet seat is going to measure bowel movement to analyze the urine so that people's health can be monitored by toilet seat. Or this Magic Shield is the company that has a specialty flooring. And then this has using a special material so that even if they fall, very unlikely that they get injured. Or Aularing is this care product has a watch to monitor and then following the biostack, and then also something happened, they're gonna connect with an outsider to help. And then instead of a watch, Aularing is a ring. And this ring can monitor the sleep pattern to the heartbeat, the vitals. Basically, this one is the monitoring what's going on in the older adult. The Nobi Smart Light is a light. It's a quite good design light, but they monitor you. They have an AI incorporated, so if something happened, they know what's going on in the life. And the Omi Eye kitchen knob. This is a kitchen knob that we put in a range, and the older range, normal range is going to be AI incorporated. So if something is going to be really hot, and then it will be automatically shut down. And then I talk about the community is important. There are a lot of community stuff is going on. And one of the things that it's interesting and I wanted to introduce is a village movement. This is a grassroots movement, and then basically all the adults members help each other. And it's about 300 villages in the US and 25,000 members, and it's growing. This one is basically, so somebody is plumber, the member is plumber, and somebody has a problem, is a plumbing problem. This plumber is going over there and fix it for free. And then if member is accountant and somebody needs accounting issues, then this she or he is going to help to solve the problem for free, because members are free things. And then there's a lot of senior center, adult daycare centers growing, which is very important because older adults living alone needed to go outside to meet people. And at the same time, you may need some kind of monitoring. And if you go into the places, they can do the exercise and then they can play things. And then at the same time, and they can meet friends, and then somebody is monitoring. So which is really good for the people who live in an independent alone. And there's also online communities and resources, and Dora Food is for caregivers. AARP or other in the National Institute for Aging has a lot of resources to take a look. And then lastly, and then of course, healthy lifestyle is important. Social engagement, learning, exercise, stress management, and sleep is all important. You have to practice. And then in the future, this is kind of funny saying, but basically, the home has a robot in there and AI in there, and then connected with emerging alert system and a lot of technologies in there. But the important thing is the community. You have to have a human touch. So we are involving community, and then also the technology. That would be the future ecosystem, ideal ecosystem. And in the end, I just wanted to talk about what we're doing. We are a startup and then called Asia Innovators. We'd like to unlock the potential of 50 plus market for independent living, basically. And currently 130 million US age 50 spend $8.7 trillion a year, but it's overlooked and by industry and innovators. And as you guys all know, 90% products fail because of the product market mismatch. And then unfortunately, little effort is done to understand what all the adults want, so that the few insight, few clues on motivation. Although there's a lot of companies are working on aging tech, but some of the aging tech are not used because they don't know what all the adults wanted to do. And then also the little data on adults aging in place. Also 95% living at home, everybody is going to senior housing because it's easy to find what those people congregated and then test it. But the people who are living all around in the United States, you don't know. So what we're trying to do is building a nationwide in-person remote aging in place older adults testing network. And we wanted to test those people to whether they like to use it or what's the program, what's the motivation. But at the same time, we wanted to create some kind of fun, connected community. And it's so important for the adults to be together, not necessarily together, to have engaged and socially. So we wanted to create that environment for them. And then we wanted to do AI human hybrid tool to reveal deep insights and user motivation. And then eventually in the future, I wanted to do a venture studio so that the lot of ideas has been around in older adults, but they don't know what to do with it. And then we would like to help them to make the things to user-centric. So that's a presentation. And then if you're interested, if you have questions, and if you're interested about age well innovation, please let me know. And also I'm thinking about do some sort of a round table on various topics on aging. And if you are interested, please let me know that we may be able to organize something. And particularly the major part of the financing part is missing. So it might be interesting to talk about.
Wow. These were two powerhouse presentations, and I thought I knew a fair amount about this industry, but I learned so much. And I feel like, well, number one, there were questions about whether or not these slides will be distributed, which we didn't check. So that's up to you if you're willing to let us distribute these slides or.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you can email me, I'm happy to do that. So go ahead, I put my email in the chat, but I'm happy to do that. Deb, if it's okay, I'll just answer one quick question from the chat before it gets to the top of the hour.
Yes, yes.
Would that be okay?
And to say that you've both agreed to stay later because we
Yes.
knew we had a lot of information. So if people have questions that you're willing to stay for them. So thank you for that.
And then as a slide, if you can email me, and then also we can provide.
Perfect. So I just wanted to say quickly, Saeko, that was fantastic. And she raised a very important data point, and I alluded to it. 95% of the people age in place at home, right? And so that is such an important point, and all that she shared and showed really underscores that you can continue to do that safely. And the supplemental communities that are on the slide, the villages, they were part of our Vitality Society community. We were programming their villages nationwide. And so Thank you, Saeko, for sharing that. And it's such an important point. And then I'll just answer the one question that I got, but I'm sure there's others. Someone asked, what is value-based care? And many of you here are experts in that, but I'll be more of an expert after the HBS course for 5 days, 10 cases, many notes, and a 500 book later. But basically, value-based care is outcome-driven. So you're prioritizing the quality and the outcomes of those that you're serving. So why that's relevant to senior housing is because if we're in an environment where we are providing the activities, we're providing the meals, we have the caregivers, we have the community, presumably we could create an environment that improves the quality of life and improves the health of older people. So the way that we see it in the industry is, well, wait a second, we're keeping people from falling. We're keeping people from the hospital. When they leave the hospital, we're supporting them so they don't return to the hospital. So we believe that as an industry, we could play a really significant role in that ecosystem, keeping people well and improving the outcomes at a lower cost. So that's the essence of that. So I just want to make sure I answered that before people peeled off.
Sure. And welcome to have other people can either raise their hands or put questions in here. I have one that I don't know if it's answerable, but with all of these statistics of aging population, less people to care and all of that, which is, frankly frightening. In the current environment where there's talk of cutting Medicaid and Medicare and all of those things, do you think that there's an appetite that will increase innovation and force whatever communities and private people to step up more? Or do you feel like it's just going to make it worse?
Saeko, I'll let you do that one.
So it depends on how worse it is going to be, but the lot of things can be helped by some of the innovation, not necessarily the technology itself, could be a financial innovation, and then probably you can use a crowdfunding system to be more appropriate to that people can use. There are something to help the lack of the help, but it's a difficult, tough situation.
And I'll just build on that. Senior housing historically has been almost entirely private pay. So there is veteran benefits. There are some of the long-term care insurance covers part of it, but for the most part, the industry is private pay. And that is why the last lesson learned, really the problem that we're facing is this affordability issue, because well, now we're seeing what's happening in the market, right? If you're an older person, you've been saving and now your savings or your investments are less, it really impacts what people can pay. And with less of a safety net in terms of Medicare or Medicaid, it's really problematic. So that's why, go back to the prevention. We talked a lot about this on Vitality Society. We did it 7 days a week. We designed a program so they could stay very fit, right? So balance was an opportunity, strength, stamina, right? Everything that these people can do. Now, one last point that it's important is this is a generation of older person that's very educated and enlightened. When I began my work with seniors when I was in high school, it was the war generation. They survived the Depression. They weren't really thinking about healthy foods. They were just happy to have food. So I had to go into these senior centers and convince people and demonstrate for people how you use some of these ingredients like oat bran and eat healthier and better. But this is an enlightened generation. So with the scarcity of these funds, which is going to be extremely problematic, this is a generation, and we saw them Vitality Society, they'll show up and they want to stay well. They're motivated. So as an industry, it's our responsibility to facilitate that and hopefully work with insurance companies and providers of healthcare to do that even better and more than we could on our own.
So in terms of the
I'm sorry, go ahead, Saeko.
So in terms of the housing thing, that it's options that some people are talking about is creating tiny home, the village Tiny home village, it's basically the tiny home is it's very affordable price. And then if you put the smartphones, smart technologies in there and then connected, probably it's affordable. So then also the people can live independently. That is the option. It's completely different from what Meredith is talking about. It's a much less the help is done, but that can be a possibility.
This is a great
But
question
I
from
want to, yes, no, Shanna Lee posted a great question related to what you're both discussing, and basically said, should people age in home? And she's put what many people have experienced. For my mother, in hindsight, she should have gone independent living earlier, where there was community meals made for her so that she would eat and didn't have to worry about housing upkeep. But people that I've known that work in independent living say it's usually when a crisis has to occur before they're sort of forced to leave their home, and then it's traumatic. So what advice do you have,
so
or
I think
recommendations to help people move
you've
either to
nailed
smaller
it.
houses or whatever?
Yeah, I'll just take this quickly and then I'll pass to Saeko. So you nailed it, right? So people wait as long as possible, come in as late as possible. And there's always some sort of inflection point, right? Where a crisis arises and then you make a decision. As an example, your spouse dies, you fall, you're discharged from the hospital. So we put that in the category of a need-based decision versus the more aspirational, desirable decision to move in, right? It's a place I desire to be, I want to be. So what Shauna experienced is very common. It happened to my grandmother in Florida. We spent years trying to get her into communities. She went temporarily during hurricanes and chose not to come until the last 6 months of her life. And it was really problematic because I went through the activities calendar with her, and she used to be the head of activities at her community. And I said, Grandma, these are things you don't even have to create, you could just go. And she said to me, I don't feel well enough to do anything. And it's sad because the greatest feedback we get, and it's very measurable, is that people benefit and enjoy the most is the camaraderie. And if you are not well enough and you don't come in early enough, you can't benefit from that. You can't eat with people, you can't go to activities with people. So there is something to be said. That being said, it is very difficult. Like my mother, I did Vitality Society because she threatened me. She'll never move to any of these communities that I was ever part of. And so it is a real challenge. She's here and she will validate that. She still feels that way. She just texted me. She's like, I'm never going. I know, Mom. So the point is, like, you know, the reality is that most parents, even my parents, don't want to go. But those that go, and when they're there, really enjoy it and the benefits from it. So Seiko, I'll pass to you.
I think this inflection point happens and it happens to everybody. Probably it happened to me, happened to Meredith in some point of your life. And then when that happens, we have to be prepared. So we have to be ready. And that's why, not that we have to be worried about that, well, I'm going to be full or I'm going to be sick. Well, you don't have to worry about it. But at the same time, you have to be healthier and you have to have people around you to help you. And then the technology that you can available, you should use it. And then instead of, oh, I don't need it because I don't want it, but it would help. And then housing situation can be, if you are going to incorporate some of the smart devices in the house in early on, even if you are not moving around easily, the device is going to help you and device is going to monitor you. So that would be a different, if you continue living in a home, I think it's, yeah, good and bad. And if you don't have a community help and you are living alone in a home, it's very bad. But at the same time, if you are in community around and living at home, may not that bad. And then sometimes the facility, probably Meredith is doing a good job for the facilities and doing people to engage. And that is so important for the facility. Like my mother's case, she's recently going to the facility. and she's very social, but that does not mean that the people around you, the people that she wants to talk to. And she paints,
Yeah.
she was singing, she was painting, and she did a lot of things by herself. And the facility, and they don't have nothing. People don't do that. And then it's very hard for her to be associated with people around. So if you're gonna send it home, then that somebody like Meredith is going to make the people really happy to have a motivation and keep going kind of things is so important. And then it's the same thing about home, that you are alone, and then they used to have going to all over the world and traveling, and all of a sudden you can't go anywhere. And you have to understand that is going to be a really difficult. So you have to find a way to make them go somewhere using that there was a technology to put the XR technology to go to visit somewhere else or something. They can do the technology, do it, and then always have to have a people around.
Yeah, I want to make one quick point. Saeko raises a beautiful one, right? Is that not everybody goes to these big communities and participates. So for anybody that really wants to learn more about senior housing, there's a show called Man on the Inside. So my way back from Korea, South Korea, I
I saw
watched
it.
it. Yes,
I saw it.
it's great. So 8 episodes, and it's Ted Danson. All of us know him from Cheers. People are writing, they love the show to me. It is so good. And he moves in. He doesn't necessarily want to be there, but he works there. Interestingly, I'll just leave it at that, and you'll get to see, like, he works inside, right? And what's fascinating is it really highlights, the sadness that he had when he first moved in because he lost his wife, the uncertainty of being there, then connecting with residents who made it good for him there, and then really bonding and finding friendship and activity that aligned with him. And it's just a beautiful, they did a fantastic job. And then the other one that's very funny is Grace and Frankie, Lily Tomlin and Jane Fonda, who are 2 of my favorites from 9 to 5 and Incredible Shrinking Woman. I know some of you are my age and remember that, but they had an episode, their kids are trying to get them to move into senior housing and they are just not going. They don't want to go. They don't go. And then at one point, Lily Tomlin says, you know what, I'll go. And the kids are so surprised. And she goes, fuck no, I'm not going. And then when she gets there, what's so interesting is she loves to paint, like you said, Saeko, and they won't let her paint in certain times of the day in certain rooms. And Jane Fonda has a company and she's not allowed to work there. She can only live there. And so there were all these restrictions. That's not a great depiction of senior housing, but it is what people think. And they dress up in the clothes that is stereotypical of what people think, but it's not accurate. So that wasn't a great representation of senior housing, but I have to say it was quite funny.
Wow. I just want to ask, can you, I believe Meredith, you put your email in the chat. Can
Yes.
Saeko, could you put yours in as well? Or put it in because people have requested that, and we will also send it out.
I also put the link to some of the white papers that I did if people are interested in more of this topic.
Yes,
Thank
you.
And that might be helpful to dig deeper.
And there's one last question here about, is there any viable path to getting family caregivers paid to care for elders?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
in California, they have this new initiative, a law that it would pay for certain caregivers. But
Yeah,
I don't think it's national.
Yeah, so one of the colleagues that I work with to build Vitality Society, she's in Minnesota and she became a full-time caregiver to her mother, so much so that she has dementia, so much so that she couldn't work, right? She couldn't leave the house. And there was a program that she qualified for and she's very enterprising, and it was amazing. So she found a program in the state that she gets a stipend to stay at home. And she gets paid to provide the care that she would have to pay for and potentially get paid less if she went out of the house to work. So as you can imagine, for so many people, as I said, affordability is a huge problem. And if you are caring for an elder at home, sometimes it's not safe to leave them at home. I've had many friends deal with dementia and they try to do it, but they can't leave them home alone. and then getting someone to be there full time when they're out of the house, you have to make enough money to cover that cost, because an hourly caregiver is very expensive depending on the market. And so it's becoming increasingly so, and these people are becoming increasingly scarce. So it is very problematic and very costly. So there are states, you could look into it. I know for sure Minnesota, and that's worth looking into if you're doing that work.
So not on a national or federal level.
Not
There's
that
nothing.
Not that I
Mm.
know of. I don't specialize in that. Maybe Saeko, you've done a little bit more research.
No, the national, it's the United States of America. It's very difficult.
Yes, especially now. So, well, thank you for staying. We did go over. Thank you for all the people that were able to stay. This was so informative and lots of food for thought. And I had no idea that there was so much technology out there
Oh,
for
it's great.
assistance.
I was just
And
gonna,
as
gonna
well
say-
as all of the other pieces that you told us about, Meredith, in terms of the statistics and what things to look for. So I thank you both very much. You did a lot of work putting this together, and it was so informative. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. You made it possible. You made it here. So that's even more remarkable.
Yes, I'm visiting some of these places that they say are great places for retirement. I'll have to add my list. We'll see. I'm
And
not
then you
retired.
can give the next talk, right, on the international piece.
So anyway, take
Uh, so-
care, everyone. Again,
one
thank you.
question. I didn't
Yes.
read